The purpose of the audit plan and risk assessment procedures is to assist the auditor in designing and performing further audit procedures that are responsive to the assessed risks of material misstatement and contravention. The objective of this video is therefore to demonstrate how to complete and streamline the audit plan and risk assessment procedures to ensure your SMSF audits both remain compliant and efficient. Audit Flow's planning and risk identification procedures are found in work papers B1 to B6 and B8, with work paper B7 being the risk assessment work paper. Certain Audit Flow work papers contain numerous questions that require the auditor to tick completed for all. As the auditor becomes familiar with the questions being asked, he or she may wish to tick completed once and have all questions marked as completed simultaneously where appropriate. To demonstrate this function, we will use work paper B1 preliminary engagement activities. By clicking in the Prepared By box, the date, and then the date again in the drop-down calendar, the auditor is able to auto-populate all completed boxes for a number of different work paper procedures. In certain situations, the auditor may form the opinion that a particular question or particular default response is not applicable. For example, when assessing threats to the ethical requirements in work paper B1, preliminary engagement activities, the auditor may not have identified any threats to the ethical requirements and therefore believe the default threats appearing in the work paper are not applicable. If none of these risks are applicable to the particular fund, the auditor is able to delete these risks and provide the comment "No threats identified." Going forward, for firms that have purchased the firm template module, they can then create their own firm template with these changes saved for future audits. The response to many questions relating to the audit of a self-managed super fund is often the same. Therefore, a number of questions within the audit planning and risk assessment work papers have pre-populated or default responses. For example, in work paper B2, Auditor Independence, the default response to threats to independence is set at "No threats identified." Auditors can change this by simply changing "No" to "Yes" and following the prompts. Audit Flow provides a number of template letters and documents, which on the basis that all relevant fund information has been entered into the file, will pre-populate into the various letters or documents. If we take a look at the engagement letter, for example, we can see that the date, trustee name and address, and fund name have all been pre-populated into the template letter. The auditor has an obligation to obtain an understanding of the fund's internal controls and fraud risk processes. Work paper B3.1 provides a trustee control and fraud risk questionnaire to assist auditors in obtaining this understanding should they wish to use this document. Information obtained relating to fraud and control risk is then summarised in work papers B4 Fraud and work paper B7 Internal Controls to assist in assessing risk. The audit strategy is a very important part of the audit plan, as it documents an understanding of the scope of the engagement along with important areas for the auditor to focus. It's also a very comprehensive work paper. Despite the comprehensive nature of this work paper, there are a number of ways to streamline this process. Firstly, much of the relevant fund information is automatically pre-populated through the integration of Audit Flow with various accounting software providers such as Class, BGL and Supermate. However, whilst many of the fields in the audit strategy are pre-populated from the accounting software, if any fields are not pre-populated, this is usually because either the information has not been included in the accounting software or the particular field does not pre-populate. Note that work paper B4 is a very comprehensive work paper. Should the auditor feel any of the procedures are not applicable or required, the auditor has the ability to either note "Not applicable" next to the item, or otherwise delete the item and save the template if the firm has the firm template module. To do this, the auditor would select File, Edit, delete the applicable item, and then close the edit mode to return to Workpaper B4. A number of the sections in the audit strategy contain pre-populated responses and guidance. These areas include the preliminary engagement activities, reporting requirements, reporting material issues, understanding of the control environment, plus more, all the way through to going concern risks. The auditor should review this information and make any comments or changes as necessary. Some sections, such as the internal control environment, require the auditor to ask or consider a series of questions. Unfortunately, these questions are unable to be pre-filled at this stage, and therefore the auditor will need to individually respond to each question. If the auditor has their own method for implementing this audit procedure, they have the ability to edit this section if desired and save as their own firm template for firms that have purchased the firm template module. When importing financial information into Audit Flow, some of this information flows through to a number of pages within the Planning and Risk Assessment workpapers. 3 of these workpapers include Workpaper B5, Materiality, Workpaper B6, Preliminary Analytical Procedures, and Workpaper B7, Risk Assessment. B8, Trust Deed Review. This workpaper contains a large number of questions that require a response from the auditor. Unfortunately, this workpaper is not able to be pre-populated at this stage. Should the auditor feel any particular question is not applicable to the scope of the audit or the particular engagement, such as the section on benefit payments or pensions when the member is not receiving benefit payments, then these sections or any particular questions can either be marked not applicable or deleted and the template saved should the firm have purchased the firm template module. Workpapers B1 to B6 and B8 are useful in identifying both high-level risks of misstatement and non-compliance, for example, risks that could impact the entire fund, as well as risks that may impact a particular financial statement item or legislative provision. Any risks identified when completing these workpapers, as well as any risks identified when completing the actual audit program, are listed in Workpaper B7 for assessment and response. Workpaper B7 allows the auditor to assess risks relating to control risk, financial statements, fraud risks, compliance risks, and requires the auditor to provide a conclusion as to the overall risk assessment. For each of the above, Audit Flow contains a comprehensive risk library to assist the auditor, and also provides the auditor with the ability to add a blank risk which may not appear in the risk library. Upon completion of the risk assessment, the auditor should ensure the audit approach, audit sampling method, and supervision and review information remains appropriate to the engagement based on the assessed level of risk. Whilst Workpaper B7 is a comprehensive document, if during the completion of the audit no risk has been identified, then consequently there is nothing to assess. Therefore, if this is the case, the auditor may wish to include a comment in the top box, "No risk identified during the audit."